A warm welcome to you, dear students, to the history class. After we have gone through the world history, the history of India, now let us talk about the history of Goa. You all know that Goa was ruled by the Portuguese for around 475 years. The Portuguese came to Goa in 1510 when Afonso the Albuquerque acquired control of Goa from the Adil Shah of Bijapur. Since then, the Goans have been struggling for their freedom from the Portuguese rule. We know that the Goans struggled for freedom from the Portuguese rule when we read and talk about the various revolts that the Goans fought with the Portuguese to free Goa from the clutches of the Portuguese rule. Some of the famous revolts are the revolt that took place in Concoli in 1583, the Pinto Revolt in 1787, and the Rani Revolt from 1852 to 1912. But these revolts that the Goans fought against the Portuguese were unsuccessful because they lacked a lot of support. And also, they were localized in nature. The people of Goa felt the Portuguese oppression during the rule of Salazar in Goa. Salazar was the ruler of Portugal, and from Portugal he would rule Goa. Now, let us talk about the dictatorship of Dr. Salazar. The establishment of Dr. Salazar's rule in Portugal was a period of repression in Goa because the Portuguese had implemented certain acts in Goa. They implemented the Acta Colonial by which the civil liberties of the people were abolished. Civil liberties refer to the freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of press. These liberties of the people were abolished according to the Acta Colonial imposed upon the people of Goa by the Portuguese. Censorship on the press was also introduced. Censorship means whatever was written in the newspapers was checked before it was published. In case anything against the Portuguese government was written in the newspapers, that particular article was not allowed to be published. By this we mean there was censorship on the press. All other newspapers coming into Goa were also censored. All the political parties except the União Nacional were banned. That means all other political parties in Goa were banned. Only one party was allowed, that was the União Nacional, which was a Portuguese party. Dr. Salazar had a very firm control over Goa. His rule had led to the establishment of a number of political organizations in Goa and outside Goa. Let us now look at some of the political organizations that were set up in Goa because of the dictatorship of Dr. Salazar. We will see the first organization known as the Goa Congress Committee. The Goa Congress Committee was established by Dr. Tristão Bragança Cunha to free Goa from the Portuguese rule and integrate Goa with Mother India. Dr. T.B. Cunha was joined by his two nieces, Berta de Menezes Bragança and Dr. Beatriz de Menezes Bragança. The GCC was the first political organization which made the people of Goa realized the nature of Portuguese rule and of their civil liberties. The GCC took part in the civil disobedience movement of India in 1930. This participation of the GCC in the civil disobedience created a feeling of nationalism among the people of Goa. Thus, Dr. T.B. Cunha is regarded as the father of Goa's freedom movement. The next organization that we are going to talk about that was set up in Goa to free Goa from the Portuguese rule was the Goa Pracha Mandal. This organization was founded in Mumbai by Dr. Julião Menezes, Advocate Luis Mendes, Joaquim Dias, and Zotico Souza. The ideology of this organization was based on the philosophy of Luis de Menezes Braganza. This organization published the newspaper Gomantak in English and Romi Konkani. The next organization that we are going to talk about is the Gomantia Tarun Sangh. This organization was set up at Margao under the leadership of Shamrao Matkaikar, who was inspired by the functioning of the GCC. The Gomantia Tarun Sangh aimed to have open discussions on political and social issues. It opened a Swayam Seva Dal. It also opened a library and published a newspaper Uttejan. Some of the leaders like P.P. Shirodkar and Suryakant Naik fearlessly celebrated Independence Day with slogans like Vande Mataram at Karmali. The next organization that we will now talk about is the Goa Seva Sangha. This was another political organization founded by Purushottam Kakodkar in 1945. This organization was inspired by the Gandhian philosophy and followed the principles of Satyagraha and Swadeshi. This organization adopted the spinning of cloth on the charkha, just as you have seen how Gandhiji used to spin thread and make cloth by sitting on the spinning wheel, or as we call it, the charkha. This organization secretly observed national days. This organization organized the people in the villages to fight against the Portuguese. These were some of the organizations that were struggling for Goa's freedom from the Portuguese rule. Besides these, there were other organizations like the Goa Youth League, Vidyarthi Congress, Rashtra Seva Dal, which also played a role in fanning the flames of nationalism among the people of Goa. We will now begin with the impact of India's freedom struggle. Many of the Goans who were in Bombay had actively participated in India's freedom struggle. In 1942, Peter Alvarez and Vishwanath Lavande had participated in the Quit India movement. You have heard about the Quit India movement when we spoke about India's struggle for freedom. The Quit India movement was started by Mahatma Gandhi on 8 August 1942. And here we are making a mention that some of the Goan leaders also participated in the Quit India movement to free India from the British rule. After this movement, the Goans in Bombay had drafted a manifesto wherein they had urged the Portuguese government in Portugal to grant civil liberties to the Goans. But it did not yield any positive results. The Goans in Bombay wrote a special letter to the Portuguese government asking them for civil liberties, but the Portuguese government refused to grant the Goans their civil liberties. We will now talk about the movement of 1946. The liberation movement gained momentum in the 1940s when India's freedom struggle was in its last phase. You all know that India got independence in 1947. So the period between 1940 to 1947 was the last phase of India's independence. During this time, the Portuguese government had continued with its policy of repression by denying the civil liberties to the people of Goa. Denying means by not giving them their civil liberties. It was at this time that Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia had come to Goa for rest on the invitation of Dr. Julião Menezes. When Dr. Lohia came to Goa, he stayed at Asolna, and there he got a chance to interact with the leaders of Goa. Dr. Lohia was a socialist leader and a very active leader in the Quit India movement. He advised the people of Goa to launch a massive movement. A massive movement means a very big movement against the Portuguese. On 18 June 1946, Dr. Lohia arrived at the railway station in Margao, where he was greeted with the slogans Jai Hind. He then arrived at the open space near the municipal building in Margao. In Margao, there was a meeting that was held to challenge the ban on civil liberties. But as soon as Dr. Lohia started his speech, he was arrested and taken to the Margao police station. When the people heard of this, they all flocked in large numbers to the police station. And while they went there, they shouted slogans. On the next day, Dr. Lohia was taken to Kole and released. In this movement, the women also participated. And Vatsala Kittani was the first Goan woman to be arrested for raising the slogan Jai Hind. 18 June was later commemorated as Goa Revolutionary Day, and the 18 June road in Panjim is a remembrance of this event. In September 1946, Dr. Lohia returned to Goa, but he was arrested as soon as he reached Kole and then imprisoned in the Aguada jail for 10 days, after which he was released on the borders of Goa. After Ram Manohar Lohia was sent out of Goa, the movement slowly died down due to the repressive measures of the Portuguese government. Leaders like T.B. Kunya and Purushottam Kakotkar were arrested and deployed, or they were sent to Portugal. P.P. Shirodkar was deported to Angola. Angola is in Africa. And Divakar Kakotkar was deported to Cabo Verde. However, Dr. Lohia continued the movement from Belgaum on the advice of Mahatma Gandhi. Let us now move on to the next subtopic, National Congress Goa. The National Congress Goa was established at Londa near Belgaum, with Dr. Ram Hegde as its president. The National Congress Goa had leaders like Peter Alvarez, Pundalik Kaitonde, Mark Fernandez, Anthony D'Souza, and others. This organization strictly believed in the principles of Satyagraha. Satyagraha means non-violence. Let us now talk about the Azad Government Dal. At the session of the National Congress Goa, a section of its members founded the Azad Government Dal with the intention of conducting an armed struggle against the Portuguese. An armed struggle means to fight using ammunition. Some of its active members were Vishwanath Lavande, Prabhakar Sinari, Bala Raya Mapari, Rock Santan Fernandez, and Mohan Ranade. There was yet another organization that was formed at this time, was known as the Goa Vimochan Samiti. This organization was established in 1954 with the only objective of liberating Goa from the Portuguese rule. Its headquarters were located at Pune. This organization conducted mass meetings all over India. People from all parts of India offered financial and moral support to this movement. Besides these, there was also the Goa Action Committee. The Goa Action Committee was formed in 1953 in Bombay under the leadership of Dr. T.B. Kunya to bring all the Goan nationalists and chalk out a definite program to liberate Goa. We will now talk about the Satyagraha of 1954. On 15th August 1954, the National Congress Goa launched its first Satyagraha in Goa under the leadership of three leaders, Mark Fernandez, Alfred Afonso, and Anthony de Souza. In this satyagraha, around 4,000 to 6,000 satyagrahis were expected to participate. When the Portuguese came to know that 4,000 or 6,000 satyagrahis are expected to participate in this satyagraha, the first thing that they did was they blocked the borders of Goa. They blasted the bridges and ordered to shoot at sight. They also suspended the railway and ferry services and clamped a curfew on Goa. In spite of all this, a large number of satyagrahis managed to enter Goa. Alfred Afonso hoisted the Indian flag on the Terracol fort on the Goa borders. But the Portuguese managed to recapture the fort within 24 hours. This was followed by Satyagraha in the different parts of Goa. Satyagraha of 1955. On 6th April 1955, a Satyagraha was organized by the Azad Government Dal. Around 4,000 Satyagrahis from Kashmir, Punjab, Bengal, Gujarat, Karnataka, and Maharashtra crossed the borders. Under the leadership of Mohan Ranade, a number of attacks were organized on the police stations. Since it was a militant organization means it was a military organization, the members attacked the police station at Mapsa, clashed with the Portuguese soldiers at Pomurpa. Clashed means they got into a fight with the Portuguese soldiers, raided the Kunkolim outpost, disrupted the traffic. Disrupted means stopped the traffic and cut telephone wires. During the attack on the Betim police station, Mohan Ranade was wounded and later tried and sentenced to 26 years of imprisonment and deported to Portugal. That means Mohan Ranade, because he attacked the Portuguese, they arrested him and they sent him to Portugal on exile. Altogether, 32 satyagrahis were shot dead by the Portuguese, including Karnal Singh from Punjab. In these satyagrahas, a large number of women had actively participated. Some of them were Sindhutai Deshpande, Sudhalata Joshi, Irene Heredia, Maria Joaquina Calista. All these women defied the Portuguese orders and were ready to face any consequences. That means they were ready to sacrifice to any extent to get liberation for Goa. Let us now move on to the last part of this topic, that is Operation Vijay. On 11 December 1961, V.K. Krishna Menon, who was India's foreign minister, decided to use military force to liberate Goa from the Portuguese rule. This military operation that was organized was known as Operation Vijay and was placed under the command of General Chowdhury and directed by Major General Kande. Accordingly, the Indian troops means the Indian army, was sent to Belgaum Wapi, and Yunnan. And these troops were instructed to attack Goa, Daman, and Diu because at this time Goa, Daman, and Diu was under the Portuguese rule. On 12 December, the two main routes that connected Goa to India were sealed to help the movement of the Indian Army. The Indian Army entered Goa from the north, from the east, and the south of Goa. On 19 December 1961, the troops arrived at Panjim from Betim. They hardly faced any resistance, that means the Portuguese hardly stopped the Indian troops. By 10 a.m. in the morning, General Kendate hoisted the Indian flag. At around 4:30 p.m. in the evening on the same day, the Indian soldiers captured Murmagaon. In the meanwhile, the soldiers who had captured Kankona reached Margao and captured all the government buildings. On the same day, the Portuguese Governor General Vassaloi Silva handed over the political power to the Indian government by signing the instrument of surrender. Thus, Goa was liberated on 19 December 1961. Thank you.